I'm really excited to be here today as well, and it's sunny and it's summer and it's Saturday, so good for you. So again, my name is Emmy and I am at Emerge to Learning Academic Enrichment. It's my own business that I started. I've been in the public school for 24 years. And we can't reach everybody. We're not meeting everybody's needs. Everyone is saying we need something different, and so I'm trying something different on my own. I have an elementary ed degree and then a master's in reading and literacy, and I've taught writing, and writing is my love. And so I think that's why you asked me to come. So I do tutoring, enrichment workshops, and homeschool support, but I just love working with people and teaching kids how to write. And so I'm just looking for some new strategies in this day and age and ways to get kids excited about writing. I feel like that oral communication is pretty easy for them. Written communication is a higher level. We have to raise it up to a higher standard. And when you ask kids to write with that blank piece of paper, we probably all remember getting that, where do I start and what do I do? Back in my day, we would write and then have something later and put it in, or just put a footnote or add it in later, and it doesn't cut it anymore. And so I use a couple strategies. I'm not used to using the clicker, so bear with me. This will just kind of keep me going on time. So I have two strategies that I have found that I used and I love, and I still use them as an adult as well. It can help you with that written. It can also help you with writing, or you use it with writing. It can also help you with oral communication, just because it causes you to think, process what you're trying to say, and get it in some kind of an order. One that I pull from is Step Up to Writing. It's a color code. It's explicit instruction for paragraph structure. So while mechanics is important, capitalization, spelling, grammar, and usage, I'm not talking to those things today, and hopefully you have some kind of grammar and all that mechanical part of your writing that you're doing. What my talk today will be with the strategy is to get that rough draft out so that it's organized and kids feel like they can move to that next step of proofing, editing, and getting your final. I also use one called Race that I will talk briefly about. It is more for written responses to text questions after reading a passage. So back in my day, again, it was like the more you wrote about answering a reading response question, you could kind of BS your way through it and get it right. But this is a way to write with evidence, answering the question. Race is restate the question, answer the question, cite sources so you have evidence, and then explain how that affects you or what that means to you. And so if kids can answer, especially you're older, and I would say, fourth on up to high school, if they can answer a written response question using that, they're going to get a high-end grade. And in your case, you're not necessarily grading them. And I'm not sure, because I'm new to the homeschool environment, I don't know if you have to do any assessments or anything at the end. And if you don't, good for you. If you do, or you're trying to get into college, or your student is trying to do that and they need to, this will take them there. This will answer the question with all the important information that they need when you make that next step. So I'll start with the Step Up to Writing. It uses a color code, green, red, and yellow. If kids can imagine and visualize in their head what each part of a paragraph or an essay should have, then when they sit down to write it, they're ready to go. They have something in their mind, and it's not as intimidating. You teach the requirements of the purpose for each paragraph or even each sentence when we're talking about first grade through third grade. You know, what am I saying in my starting sentence? What am I saying in the next? How do I know when my paragraph is done? So you teach that. When I learned about the Step Up to Writing, the analogy that I was taught was it's like driving a car. You just don't put your child in the car and say go. They have to learn to look at the tires, look around the car, get in and where's your pedals, which one is which, your blinker, look in the mirror, what is the order? And that's what this does for writing. So they don't just get in, have that piece of paper, and go, and frozen. I would like us to act out a human paragraph. In your home setting, that would involve using your family, or maybe having some friends over, or maybe going to a co-op and doing that. It might be a fun way or a great activity to do if you belong to a co-op and you're getting together on a writing day. So it may not work just for you and your child at home to do the human paragraph, but once we get into working on that, you can do another way using the color code where you're not getting up and acting it out, but you're using something like this, and I'll explain what these are, in order to just write it between you and your children or your child. And then finally, after you've gone through those other steps, I have found, in my experience of working with kids, they're not afraid to sit down and start writing because they remember the structure. After putting on a human paragraph, performing what your writing should look like without picking up pencil paper, without worrying about spelling, grammar, sentence syntax, they learn to say it, then it's up here. They haven't memorized every single sentence, but they can sit back down and I could say, write your paragraph, and they could do it. And it was just a beautiful thing that, I mean, for me as a teacher, it was like, yes, it made a difference. So, and then of course, the pieces I'm not going to talk so much about, once they write it, it's not gold. At that point, that's where you go back and you find some strategies for editing, proofing, revising, whatever, needs to normally happen in good writing anyway. But because writing feels so grueling at times, and that's the best word I could ever use for it in the classroom. I loved it, but I would get done with a class and go, oh, it's just grueling. They're struggling, they're squirming and sweating and resisting. Once they know what to do, it gets quiet and they write because they're not having to look for excuses not to. Okay, so step up to writing first. The color code is an upside down stoplight. Green means go. That's your introduction. The purpose of green is to tell your audience, your readers, what you're getting to write about. And there are all kinds of wonderful ways to do that. I'm going to use a very basic example today. I will be using what I call a power statement. I would like to tell you two things. An example I'm going to talk about is this one. Sorry, a little nervous. Could I get you to fix this for me?
You're fine.
All right.
Don't be nervous, you're doing great.
Jen,
I'm nervous when you talk to children.
You're doing amazing.
You guys are awesome. So, cats protect themselves in two ways, might be a topic. You might say to your child, they've read a book about cats, or they've watched a program, or they've done some research. A power statement would be something like that. So, thank you. So your green is go, and then in step up to writing, we put a green down on the bottom as well. So green is go. Green is go back and tell your audience what you just told them about. And this is where I talk about synonyms. Use a different word. So in the cat example, they might come up with cats protect themselves in two ways. When they're all finished, they have to think about how can I say that very same thing again? Clearly, felines can take care of themselves. Might be an example of what they would say. And that's where you pull in the synonyms. How can I say the very same message a different way? without pulling in any new information. Obviously, when you get into 5th grade, high school, you're going to have a larger introduction and a longer conclusion. In fact, they may be their own paragraphs. But to start with little kids, it could be as simple as that. Slow down as your transition. I think of first, second, third, as basic as you can at first, but later on you get into first, or to start with, after that, finally, last, and that's where we get to talk about, and I usually put up a poster and I give those kids transitions. And I'll say, this is my gift to you today. Here's the poster, and I leave it up here. And they have it. And again, it's very formulated. It's a formula for writing. Math has formulas too. Math is high level, and I think writing is equally high level. And so we can start with a formula and it can be okay. Creative writing can happen within the paragraphs, in the reds, when we get into the red part, where you get more creative with what you say. You become more analogies, similes, antonyms, that type of thing. So slow down is your transition, and you teach the kids the topic. For the youngest children, I usually gave them a topic, a category, or I also call it a key idea. So in the cat example, I would say first, so we've got cats can protect themselves in 2 ways. So you can see we're going to have 2 key ideas, 2 yellows. First, they're able to get away quickly from their enemy. Okay, they can, but that's boring. But that could be a first grade sentence, and then they could move on to the second yellow, which is next, cats are good fighters. And they may end by saying, then clearly felines can take care of themselves. So as I'm teaching this, I usually teach the topic, however many key ideas we're going to have, and then a conclusion. And then again, for littles, I would say that's great. That's enough for a first grader. But as they get into second, third, and up, then I'm like, okay, go back to those key ideas. Now, give me the reds. That's the stuff we love. The red is where you stop and explain. So depending on the type of writing, if it's a persuasive, it's your arguments, all your facts that back up that argument. If it's expository, which would be your writing to explain a report, then it would be the details, or facts. And if it's that argument, it might be the reasons. But really, I just say, explain. And you can have as many reds as you want. And they call this an accordion paragraph, because you can have more yellows followed by reds to back it up, or you can have more yellows followed by reds to back each other up. Some of the yellows or the transition key ideas have more facts and details, some have fewer. So in this particular one, that is an example, it happens to be equal introduction, 2 key ideas, and 2 and 2, but it doesn't come out that beautifully. You know, they're different depending on what you have to say. And so we came up with, first, they're able to get away quickly from their enemies. They can climb trees. Cats are fast runners. Very simple, short sentences, but that's where later, as you progress, you can say, how can you make that a better sentence? How can you show me that cats can climb up trees? Or give me an example. But again, for a very beginning student or class, I would start here. Instead of making yourself go through all that and pull it all out of them and have them get bored. Give me a short, sweet, pull it out in a week or a month later and say, now how can we add to that more? And so our final would be, cats protect themselves in 2 ways, that's our green. First, they're able to get away quickly from their enemies. back it up with, they can climb trees, cats are fast runners. Next, and I always taught my kids to go next, especially the little ones, and then clap, and we would put a comma after our transition, and that's just a real quick way. So we would go first, they can climb trees, cats are also fast runners. Next, so the person in the human paragraph would be doing that, and we would know, okay, now we've moved on to our next key idea. Cats' sharp claws can inflict pain and discourage attackers. Or you might just have a student that would say, cats have sharp claws. So you can go, any way, wherever your child or your student is, whatever they're ready for, and they can use their pointed incisors to bite the enemies when necessary. Those reds are the parts that we remember. They're the stuff in life that we like. The rest of that paragraph is the foundation, setting it up. And so it's also a really good place. And then I always have, so I'm sorry I keep jumping around a little bit, but I will show you my outline that the kids use, and I always have a giant C on the bottom of what we call an informal outline, so that they remember, okay, now I have to go back and say, and I give this as a gift as well, a concluding word, such as clearly, and they love that word because they don't use it a lot, or in conclusion. And so I just have a list up of that says concluding statements for the littles, and it would be clearly, in conclusion, in summary, all in all. And so they're all pulling from something, and again, that's the signal to let us know as a reader that we're not going to be given any new information. Now we're going to use a synonym and restate. We're going to go back and remind our readers what we said. And that's where they said, clearly felines take care of themselves. And so, to the introduction part, just so you realize, as you get deeper, once you've introduced that, and I used what I call a power statement right up here, state your opinion loud and bold. So we use that power statement, and then we go, you can ask a question, what do you know about cats? And so that would be a whole another seminar where you just pull out, how can I start a paragraph? And you might have one day, now that they understand the whole expectation of what belongs in a good paragraph, now you can start teaching to some of these strategies to make their writing better. And this is where I kind of say you can get a little more creative once they know. But I usually start with that power statement. The key ideas, just to emphasize those a little, you can see where I have some of the transitions, but you can look up transitions on the internet and find pages and pages and pages of words that you can use. And then later on also, kids will find out while you're reading. You can point out paragraphs. Look, this is their second key idea, but they didn't use one of these signals. They didn't use one, but we know it's another key idea. I always kind of have told my students, I want you to use one for now because I want to know that you really know. But as you get older and you get better and more sophisticated in your writing, you might write a second key idea without one of those really loud and bold signals. Because you're an accomplished writer and you're able to do it then. It's kind of like once you have the license and know how to write well, I've heard it said, then you can start breaking the rules. So if you've read, I can't think of the book, but, it's the one where the little boy is going on a plane with his father. Hatchet. Gary Paulson, if you've read that book, it's written in phrases through the whole thing. It does not have complete sentences. And so I generally would read that book to my kids as well because the little boys love it. And so do the girls, but they really connect with you. But that book is written with incorrect grammar, but I tell them they have the license to do it, you don't. There you go. So, that keeps them, you have to know as a writer. So then explanations, this is our reds, reasons, details, facts. This brings a paragraph to life, it makes it memorable. Explanations make it interesting, helps your reader understand your ideas. To me, that's the fun part, when you get to stop and really explain. The only caution there is if you're writing an essay or one paragraph, you don't want your kids to get carried away and go from one topic to the next, because they like to do that. They like to jump around, and that's where you can say, wait a minute, you're off topic. That goes down here in this key idea. Okay, so there, each one of those colors is its own lesson. But I don't do that at first. Generally, I would give the kids an example such as this. Here's one. Typed up. I'll give them a piece of paper. In fact, I did that in my last 7th grade class, and it was basically, we described a kiwi fruit. And a 2nd grade group had. And I gave it to my 7th graders, and I said, I just want you to find each of those components of the paragraph or the essay. And then the beauty of it is, when your reds start getting longer and longer, that's where they learn this is where you need another paragraph. And that's where you turn into an essay, a multi-paragraph essay. And they really see it. It's not so hard for them at that point. And I remember, again, I always go back to my childhood learning. I didn't know when to start a new paragraph. But this makes it really, really clear. And so we don't start paragraphing in 1st and 2nd grade so much. But by end of 2nd grade, 3rd, we do, because they start getting a lot of reds. And again, this whole process is called a human paragraph. And I use this to go into a 5-paragraph essay for the older kids. So you've got your topic, and I would put right on the paper T equals. And you can do it on regular written paper. You can say, get your green pen out. And when I started with writing, if we were going to do an essay, because I generally would model one, and we would do one together. So for my 7th graders, we modeled, I gave them highlighters, and we used green, yellow, and pink. And I just teach them pink is red, red is pink. So the first thing I would do is hand them one of these, or one of these. And I do have handouts if anybody wants one, just to help you remember, knowing that you could have more star ideas or you could have fewer star ideas. And if you start having more than 3, you're probably going to move into a multi-paragraph paper. But that multi-paragraph paper just repeats this. You may not necessarily repeat the topic or the conclusion, but you would say something like, in addition, after that, following, or last. And I just tell the kids to use that as a road sign through the paper. And so as I give the kids these, first thing I would ask them to do is get your highlighters out and color code it, and they love to do that. So writing starts out a little more interesting. And then it's caveman talk. You do not get to write sentences here. And I made the mistake of making this form with lines, and I don't use them now, because once you put the lines in, they want to write a complete sentence. And so if you want to get them to just take notes, and this is, I think, a beautiful introduction to what an outline is as they grow up. You know, we call it informal outline, but if you're using this instead, or a piece of notebook paper, and I would just say take your notebook paper and divide it into fourths, and then I would say, okay, write a T at the top. That whole section is for your topic. Write a star and some dashes. Another star and some dashes, and then your conclusion. And there's your notes, because you probably don't have your copy machines at home, and older kids don't necessarily want this. But I would have them do that with their color. Or you could ask them to do that with, and they love these, where I put those stickers that I dropped. You know, just put your stickers in each section, because pretty soon they know. And then when you're talking to your student or your child, you can say, you know, you don't have enough reds. And they know exactly what you're talking about. You know, that you have this key idea, your second key idea, or star idea. I mean, it just depends on the language that you use, and I've used both. For the real littles, I used star ideas. As they got older, I started calling them key ideas. But you can say, I like your key idea, but you don't have enough reds. You have so much more you could tell, and then you can start pulling more from them. So this particular one probably could have been turned into a multi-paragraph. And this is one, I believe, end of the year, my second graders, I wrote second on it. I said, let's write about, we had read a story about tools, and this character had different kinds of tools. And I think of tools in my husband's shop. And so, but then I would always tell the kids, get out your toolbox. And it would be the eraser, the pens, the pencils, the 3 colors that they always had to keep in there. And so we came up with an outline, and we put up there, this is going to be about the kinds of tools. And we came up with, one place I use tools is in my classroom. So we had, the star idea said classroom, caveman talk. And then the 3 reds, someone said crayons. Someone said rulers, someone said linking cubes, someone said scissors. So basically then they had to come up with a sentence for each one of those, and that's where we got the red. And then we had another kind of tool. Another place to use tools is in the kitchen. And so the kids came up with spoon, measuring cup, an apple peeler to peel apples. And you can just imagine the variety of tools you could pull out of your kitchen. And then the third one was in the shop. And so they had an axe, a hammer, and screws. And so that's what, or a screwdriver. And then in fact, we have tools have a great number of uses was our conclusion. And so, to me this is big, and that's why we call it an accordion paragraph. Because it can be larger with star ideas, or key ideas, or smaller. Is that my time?
No.
Oh, okay. And I haven't been paying attention to my time. So, here was another example, and this was a 7th grade, and I know you can't read it, but what it's talking about, the blue. I haven't talked to you about the blues. We call putting on the blues as they get older, as they get more mature in their writing. The topic was spending an hour a week can mean a lot to an older person who lives alone. And they had read a story in their literature book about elderly people and being on their own and how they need company. And so the introduction included background information, and we call that putting on the blues. And so, you know, they're kind of excited at that age to start making it. And so the background information said the golden years, that is what some people call old age. They think it is a time of peace and relaxation, but many old people spend time alone. Some cannot get out of their home because of illness. What can you do? What can I do, you ask, more than you think? And so this is more of a persuasive paper. Even spending an hour a week can mean a lot to an older person who lives alone. And so they had, some kids might say that they can only do good for an old if they have lots of time and lots of patience. And then they go on to debunk that and talk about how they can save time. And they went on to give examples in their reds. And so you can see how it's gone from second grade to fifth graders could do that. It just happened to be a seventh grade class that I was working with. And then your conclusions get longer. And so they're restating, but you really can make a contribution to an older person's life, even if you only have an hour. And I teach them the only thing you can put in there and summarize is information that was in the yellows, so that they don't go on and add new information. So it is regimented, it is formulated writing. And I have talked to people before who are really, really advocates of creative writing. And the older teachers who have their degrees in writing have told me, I love what you're doing because I have older kids sit down with a piece of paper and they're all over the place. And I would rather have them have the formula and the structure first, and then let's get creative. And you can do that however you like. You can do both hand in hand. But I really think this is an important piece that they do need to learn how to use. And, okay. The last one is race that I wanted to talk to you about, or the second one. And that is restate or reword. So you have read, the kids have read something. I had an example I was going to try to use. Can't think of it. Restate or reword the question. So if someone said, what are two strategies you can use to teach students how to write? Teach your students to say 2 strategies to teach people how to write would be step up to writing and the race. And so you simply restate what you said. And it's amazing how simple that sounds and how resistant some kids are to doing that. But if they do that, they're staying focused. And so teach that first, restate or reword. The next part of your answer needs to answer the question. Okay, step up to writing. Maybe you're just going to tell a little bit about it. Step up to writing is good because it teaches how to set up the structure of a paragraph. So you've answered it. The other one, race. The race strategy is good because it teaches kids how to write an answer to an essay question without just writing a lot and saying they finished it. It's very direct. Okay, then their cite might be, in Mrs. Bonds' workshop, she showed us how the color code can keep you consistent. Or you find something that I said. Or in this book that I read, Step Up to Writing claims they have a 90% average of kids learning to write. Or, you find something that you read in that material. And then the race statistics will tell you, and you would go to your race piece that you have, I may not have handy, but you would pull that out and say, they say that now students will have a 90% rate of answering the question, because whatever strategy you have, and I'm just talking now, they're going to have a statistic, they're going to have a fact. So whatever article the kids have read about their topic, it's not going to be writing. Maybe it's going to be about frogs, or, one of the ones that we did was we taught kids about waking up early and how that affects their brain and the melatonin in teenagers and all that. And so the kids had to pull something out of an article and answer it. And then after you cite it, and I'm careful about the citing piece because for little kids, I would say in Article A, the author says, and I would have them write the sentence exactly like it's written, and that's as far as I would go with citing. But as you get higher level and you learn how to cite, you would say who the author is, who the article is, and then you might have to have a citation. And so at that point, they're learning how to do an actual citation. But don't get caught up with that with the little kids, because little kids can just say, book A, or this book I read about frogs says, and then you write it and you put it in quotation marks, and they can handle that. They can handle copy. And then at the end, that's where they connect it to their own thinking. That's where their voice comes out. And so you would say, if it were my paper about, your paper about me, I learned this just makes sense. I could really do it. These are strategies that I think I could take home with my kids and they would work. Or with your kids and frogs, it might be, yes, what I learned is when I'm in the rainforest, not to touch the frogs that have red on them because they can poison you, or whatever it is that they read. They connect it to themselves and do a bit of a summary. And so I haven't given you a lot about that one because it's, I don't know, I think it's pretty easy, but, and I didn't make copies of this, but this is really nice because this says, read the prompt, restate the question, so it gives them a place to do that. My answer is, and they write their answer, cite a source, they find a spot in the book and they cite it, explain what I cited. And you might have more than one citation. And then summarize it as, therefore, I learned not to touch red frogs, or frogs with red on them. And then once they've written something like this that goes with each of the letters in race, then you can have them take that and put it into their answer. And be sure that you work on your mechanics, spelling, all that stuff I didn't talk about. So I don't think we have time to do the human paragraph.
Possibly not,
Okay.
because we are supposed to start the homeschool graduate Q&A at 11.
Okay. And I just completely lost track of time, so I Cups is capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling. And thank you. This is my own quote. I really often don't understand my own thinking until I put it in writing. I feel like my thoughts are all over the place. Once I get that good piece of writing, it looks so simple. If you read something that's well written, you're like, oh, they're good. That took them 5 minutes, when really it was grueling going through all that process, and it's okay. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
And then could you also go back, way back to the green slide where it was talking about topic? Way back. That one right there.
Oh, yeah.
Emmy, can I ask a question real fast?
Yes.
We've recorded this presentation, and I believe you talked with Amanda about on the library sharing that recording.
Yes.
Would you be comfortable with us also having a copy of the slides that we could link to
Sure.
that YouTube video? Would that be okay with you?
Yeah.
So I know that some folks have been taking pictures of the slides. Annie, thank you for being willing to share that with the library, and we will share that out to all of you. On that YouTube video in the description, we'll be able to have a link that will be like, here's the PowerPoint presentation that Emmy was going through. You click on that and you can pull that up on your computer while you're watching the recording, or that can be up on your computer for review. So that is another resource, and thank you for letting us share that
Yes.
resource with our attendees.
And if I did anything weird with myself, you have to cut that
There was nothing weird, Emmy. It was fabulous. Thank
You
you.
did amazing.
out. All right, and so then my final is just thank you. That's my website, my phone number. Thank you for coming today. I love talking about writing.